Yeah, nobody prepares you as a parent to get a phone call that is ultimately telling you to say goodbye to your child. From the time I got that call, I was 300 miles away. You just get there as safely and as fast as you can with the rest of your family in tow. Thank God I had, friends and family to support me, but nobody prepares you for that phone call. I never took it for belief that it was real, that the person or doctor on the other end of the phone doesn't know your child or his willingness to fight. Ryan had been in a really, really bad motorcycle accident. And I found halfway there that his best friend was killed in that accident. And then I was being told to tell him goodbye. His father put the phone to his ear and told me to say goodbye. And I immediately started screaming to Ryan to fight. You won't do this to me. You won't do this to your family. You'll fight, because I know you have it in you to fight.
Where were you?
I was at UMC Trauma. I was driving.
When you got the call, where were you?
I was here. I was in San Diego,
How far away
California,
from Ryan were you?
over 300 miles away.
From Ryan?
From Ryan. He was staying with his dad, who lives in Las Vegas. The accident happened in Las Vegas. He was brought in as a John Doe. So we didn't know for a long time that it had happened. Thank God Vegas has a level 1 trauma unit. He was in level 1. He was at the UMC Trauma Center. He had suffered a severe brain injury, multiple fractures. His entire right side was broken, lungs so lacerated, he wasn't breathing. He was in critical condition. And again, I was told many times that he wouldn't live, and if he did, he'd have zero quality of life.
So you had to leave from San Diego to get to Las Vegas to get to him?
Yeah, about 11 o'clock at night, midnight. We made it to Vegas about 5 a.m. in the morning. He had been admitted about 8 p.m. the night before. So they weren't expecting him to live for hours, much less that long.
What was that drive like?
It was brutal. I never considered myself one of those hysterical moms that would freak out in that situation. And I can tell you that I was freaking out in that situation. My husband, Craig, who's amazing, Ryan's stepdad since he was 2 years old, fortunately was the one driving. He had to pull over 4 times during that drive because I was getting sick. It was the longest, most brutal journey I've ever made in my entire life. So that was really, really tough.
When you got there, what did you encounter?
I basically, was met by my family who had been there supporting him and trying to, tell Ryan to stay, to wait for me to say goodbye. I was immediately pulled back to a CAT scan that was full of spots, and I had no idea what that meant. And a very young doctor looking at me in the face telling me that I needed to unplug my child, that he wasn't going to make it. And
what did you say to him?
That's probably not for a public audience, but I basically told him, how dare you not have faith in God and my son that I do, and we'll leave it up to Ryan to fight this fight, and to our faith, and not to whatever his medical textbooks may have told him in his early years in medical school.
And were you able to walk into the room where Ryan was?
I was.
And
I went and saw Ryan, and his face was beautiful. He looked like Ryan, just full of tubes and connections and a machine breathing for him, and his eyes were closed, and I don't know, something inside me could feel his fight. It's like I could hear him screaming, I'm not giving up. I'm not doing this. I know you're here, Mom. I'm not giving up.
How long were you at the hospital with him?
Well, in trauma, 27 straight days. He was in a coma for 37 days. Every single day. And UMC is a teaching hospital. Phenomenal. Thank God they saved his life. Phenomenal hospital. But every single day I had to listen to medical students being told, this is what a diffuse axonal brain injury looks like. Less than 10% of this type of injury survives, much less comes out of a coma ever. Every single day, doctors would knock me down, and every single day, nurses would pick me right back up. And we lived that roller coaster for a long time. Every day we saw little things that were hope, that we felt were big victories, like a finger moving or an eyelash blinking or a kick or a breath. And, we continually were told by doctors that they didn't mean anything. That's the body going through its healing process, but it wasn't really healing. And after 9 days, Ryan's uncle Travis, who's a really good relationship with, came in and was talking to him, and Ryan opened his eyes. And his eyes were rolled back in his head. And it was tragic. It was better with them closed, to be honest. It was really, really hard to see that. But I knew he was hearing him. I knew he was hearing us. I knew, based on how hard it was for him to open his eyes, regardless of what was behind them, that he was trying and he was fighting. And after about 20 days, he would, respond to voices. He would respond to music. Ryan loves music.
How did he respond?
At one point, some of his friends visited him and were playing a song that they thought, might trigger a song that he loved and would sing all the time. And he started mouthing the words, which was huge. And maybe that was our imagination that he was mouthing those words, but it gave us more hope and faith than we even had before. So again, these little signs, and everything so small was so big for us.
What was the biggest sign?
The biggest sign is when a doctor told him to give a thumbs up if he could hear us, and he did. So that was huge. He was able to eventually blink for yes and no and do a thumbs up. And to be honest, if that was all I got out of my son, we were happy to know that he could hear us and that he was loved and that he had support. And then after about 24 days in ICU trauma, there was a massive car accident that came in, and they couldn't keep Ryan in the trauma unit anymore because they had more critical cases. Not more critical than him, but to the point where they honestly didn't believe he was going to make it anyway. And by keeping him alive on ventilators, at one point I felt like I was being amused, but I was giving Ryan the time that he needed to survive. So he was moved to intensive care in the medical ward. And we spent about another 2 weeks there. I had some friends really fight for me to get him into an amazing rehab facility in Las Vegas. And I thank them every day. They started rehabbing him every day. He was still on a ventilator, not breathing on his own. He was not eating on his own. He couldn't walk. He couldn't talk. he couldn't communicate, other than the blinks for yeses and nos and the thumbs up. And that rehab facility, it took him under their wings, and Stephanie and Rachel and Jocelyn and Kristen and the occupational and physical therapists and speech therapists that work with Ryan endlessly day in and day out, and the CNAs and the nurses that treated him like he was their own child, really, in my opinion, saved Ryan's life. I'm grateful for everybody that pulled and fought to get him into that facility. It was a pediatric facility, which means the max age was like 20 and he was 19 at the time. When you think your 19-year-old's an adult, but they're not. They're still your baby, no matter what. And Ryan's, he was always a feisty, stubborn, destructive child. And thank God, because that personality got him through all of that. He was at that rehab facility for probably 3 months. They taught him how to talk, to feed himself, to breathe on his own, to walk, to stand, to live, to dress, to tie shoes. We take so much for granted. So much for granted. So much for granted.
Yeah.
Little things every single day. And every night they would kick me out at 8 o'clock at night, where the hospitals couldn't do that so easily. And every night when I would tuck Ryan in like a little kid, because this big 19-year-old man in this lost child's mind. And he would say, when he learned how to talk, when he could finally communicate, he would say, "Why am I so confused?" And every day we would just tell him he was less confused today than he was yesterday. And he'd smile, and we'd go do that over and over again every single day. And finally in January, his accident happened September 18th, 2014. January 9th, 2015, we were able to take him home. And to home, I mean here, to San Diego. He was able to come home with us.
That was about 4 months.
About 4 months total in the hospital. 4 months dedicated to advocating, finding resources, friends fighting, having faith, endless PT, OT, speech therapy, you name it, the people put the work in. He had a village. He really, really did. My sisters, my family, my dad, his parents, his family, he had a village, and they carried him, and he did a lot of the work himself. And I can't even believe 4 years later I'm having this conversation with all of you today, hoping that I can give you guys hope that there is faith. I've read all the stories, J.J. Virgin's son and my cousin's child with a brain injury, and I endlessly researched the positive stories, and it gave me so much hope. And my goal is, hopefully that Ryan and I can be that hope, and our family can be that hope for somebody else,